Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Simon Timperley. Welcome to Food Safety Fridays. This is edition 20. It's a very exciting day today for a number of reasons. Firstly, we've got Ruth Bell, AF senior consultant from AF Associates. Ruth, if some of our longer suffering members remember, Ruth was the very first Food Safety Fridays presenter way back in January. And Ruth talked to us about root cause analysis that day, and it was absolutely fantastic. So this is Ruth's second presentation, and Ruth's going to be talking about allergen management today, which is a fresh topic for us. We've not done that before, and really looking at unintentional contamination of food and some of the detection and prevention measures for allergen management. So we'll be having that shortly. So I'd just like to say, before Ruth comes on the screen and does a presentation, I'd just like to say thanks to Ruth and all the presenters who give their time freely and share their knowledge with you every week. And also the sponsors there, you can see them, the logos next to me here, Trace Analytics, IFS, FSSC and Safe Food 360. Very important people that help to bring these webinars to you free of charge every week and give you a certificate, etc. So thanks very much to them. Okay, I can see Ruth's ready. So without further ado, I'll head over to Ruth. There's some participation today. There's polls and questions, so we'd like you to interact and engage with those. So over to Ruth, and I'll be back for the Q&A later. Okay, Ruth?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Simon, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to a little bit about allergen management. I've titled it Allergen Management Supporting Your Business, and as Simon said, it's pretty much looking at what allergens are and then some of the controls that we can put in place to prevent unintentional contamination with allergens. So I hope you're all there and ready to go. Just a little bit about me. I work as a consultant in the food, particularly helping businesses to set up their quality, their food safety management systems for a variety of different standards. I also offer technical and legal support, and as well as doing that, act as a third-party auditor for some of the ISO and the BRC standards. So that's just a little bit about me. I work for AF Associates, and we are international food safety and quality management specialists. We work the UK, Europe, and internationally, helping businesses to set up their many different systems. The latest one that seems to be the buzz at the moment is the vulnerability assessment, but we help with various different standards advice, auditing, legislation, the technical support, as I've mentioned. We also offer bespoke training for organisations in-house at their own premises, and we have a variety of courses available on e-learning as well. But that's enough about AF Associates. Let's get on with what we're here to do. And today, just a very brief overview. We're going to have a think what allergens are, the difference between allergens and intolerance, and then think about some of the principles of allergen management and how we can prevent unintentional contamination, as well as how we can test for allergens. Okay, so why do we need allergen management? Well, ultimately it's to increase customer confidence in labelling. Various pieces of research have been done and found that for allergy sufferers, they need to be able to determine what is in products, and it has been known that in some instances up to 40% of products would be suitable for allergen sufferers, but they're unable to eat them because of the alibi labelling and miscorrect labelling. So it's really important that customers have confidence in the label information and they can make reasoned judgments. It's also, though, from an industry point of view, to reduce the number of food safety incidents and alerts relating to incorrectly labelled or products containing an unintentional allergen. We need to reduce the number of recalls and particularly withdrawals from an industry perspective, again, it's generally due to mislabeling of allergens, and ultimately, from a business perspective, it's protection of the brand and protection of the market share. So it's really important that we have allergen management. And first of all, just thinking about a poll, Simon's going to put the poll up for you. It will be interesting to find out if anybody has actually had an allergy incident at your premises. So if you feel like answering the poll, either yes you have or no you haven't, it would be very interesting to see who has had issues and any issues perhaps that you have had. So we'll look forward to seeing that information as we go through the presentation.
Okay, people can vote now straight away. The question is, has your business experienced an allergen incident that resulted in product withdrawal or recall? So we're now seeing 94% are saying, well, let's leave it to run a minute, but I can see in the sidebar. I'll tell you the results in a minute, Ruth, because I know you can't see. If you can just move your mic just a little bit away from you, getting a bit of noise. So we've got,
better?
Yeah, that's perfect. We've got so far around 90% are saying no, and around, well, actually it's changed. 13% yeah, 84% no. So
okay.
the vast majority no.
Yep. Well, that's good. That's good. Okay. Well, we'll wait and see what happens as the webinar goes on, and see whether we get any differences as we go on. But moving on, just to think about allergens and what they actually are. It's thought that about 25% of the population worldwide think they have an allergy, but in truth, it's actually probably about 2 to 3% of adults and 5 to 8% of children that do genuinely suffer from some form of food-related allergy. There are thought to be over 120 different types of food that do cause allergies, but of those 120, there's a limited number of those that actually are considered to be a public health concern, because they're the sort of the most popular allergies in terms of causing problems. And the most commonly causing ones worldwide are cereals containing gluten, milk, egg, tree nuts, peanuts, soybeans, fish, and the crustacea. Having said that, in the EU we have 14 allergens that we have to label it if they're in our products, whereas in, for instance, America, there are 8 allergens that are classed as major food allergens, which would be labelled on products. Although please bear in mind that people can be allergic to a wide range of different foods that may not be the ones that are declared. As a result of this, again, worldwide, most countries will have some form of labelling for allergy-causing foods. It will vary from country to country. And one of the reasons for this is because allergies differ from country to country. The geographical region makes a difference. For instance, here in the UK, we tend to see a lot of allergy to dairy, whereas possibly you get into Europe and it's a lot more allergy to celery and to mustard. So we do see geographical differences. And we do find that some countries have additional foods that have to be declared as allergens. So a lot of allergens out there. So a question again for you to possibly put up onto the website. What allergens do you handle at your site? It would be interesting to see what people were handling, and what possible issues you get with the allergens that you're handling.
Yep. So attendees, just type directly into the chat in your business what allergens are you handling, and then we'll see what's coming out there. So just type into the chat. You know, if you handle nuts, just type nuts, or whatever it is. Just type it in, and I'll read it out for Ruth.
Great.
Okay, they'll
Okay.
start to come. They'll start to come through shortly, Ruth. There's a slight delay in the chat, but it's not a problem.
Yep, no problem. Great. Okay. Well, we'll carry on for a little bit.
Okay.
I've just put some statistics in here. These are the Food Standards Agency in the UK, but just to sort of give us an idea. This is the incident report from 2013. We're always a year behind, but in 2013 in the UK we had 91 allergen alerts. But this is actually the first significant drop in alerts since 2006. If you notice, up in 2011, 2012, it was over 100 alerts that we were having each of those years. So that's an awful lot of recalls as a result of product that's been contaminated with allergens. And just to have a look at the main allergens of concern again in 2013 for recalls, there were 17 because of peanuts, 13 for sulfites, going down to sort of 1 for shellfish, where we got another low one, 2 for mustard. So they all total the 91. But as you can see, the major one was peanuts there.
Just
Okay.
to say, Ruth, is there not, how many different allergens is there around the world? Did you say?
There's over 120, although the main ones. I mean, we in the UK will use the European legislation, so we have 14.
Yeah.
So the main they're up there, but
well, in the sidebar from the attendees, we must have the 100 amongst all them, because almost every attendee types something in, and it ranges from cashew nuts, tree nuts, milk, mustard, celery, sulfites, soy, the big 8, EU 14, late soy lectin, dairy powder, you name it. It's milk, everything. Basically, everything you eat's almost an allergen. Anyway,
maybe.
Yeah, they're all.
Maybe we'll have to see who's. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll have to see who's got the strangest one.
Yeah. Give a prize for that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So there's the recalls. But as I say, we must realise that these are actual recalls that we're seeing the statistics for, and that doesn't include any withdrawals. Withdrawals, obviously, that's when it hasn't got out to the end consumer, so it's actually the business that's performing a withdrawal. And so these ones aren't reported into the Food Standards Agency, in which case, really, the figure is likely to be very much higher of allergen contamination, because these are the ones that are caught and brought back before they've actually got out to the end consumer. Okay. But thinking from a business perspective about the cost of all, there's lots of them, some tangible, some intangible. But there's product waste resulting from product that's had to come back, that's been contaminated. Potentially somebody could be injured through eating the allergenic material, or the ultimate is a fatality. Leading to that, we could have loss of confidence in the product and the business, so possibly purchasing products from a rival business or elsewhere, which sort of leads to loss of sales. And from a legal perspective, it could be fines, it could be prosecutions, and ultimately all of those sorts of things could lead to increased insurance costs. So lots of problems relating in a recall. So to try to prevent that, it's a case of good allergen management. Most, again, this is for the Food Standards Agency. This is the UK, but most of the recalls are as a result of labelling issues. So incorrect labelling, where we've perhaps mislabeled and not put an allergen onto the label. It could be cross-packing issues, and this is where product has been packed into the wrong pack, resulting in a product containing allergen in a pack that doesn't declare allergen. or alternatively it's as a result of allergen cross-contamination during processing and presence of an allergen in the product. So just to give you an idea of these are some recent ones. We've had a recall of gluten-free product because the presence of gluten was found to be in the gluten-free products. Another one, a cross-packing one, this was recall of strawberry cheesecakes because it wasn't actually cheesecake, it was trifle with egg in it. And of course egg is the allergen, so it wasn't declared. Another one was a recall of cranberries because they had sulfur dioxide in them, sulfur dioxide, I should say, in them that wasn't declared on the label. So as you can see, these are all in the last couple of weeks or so, and they are happening all the time. Okay, so move on. Just to sort of look where allergens sit, if we talk about classifications of reactions to food, we could talk about adverse reaction to food, and this is scientifically predictable in a population, and it splits into three areas. We've got toxicological that's a big word for a Friday afternoon, which could be chemicals. Histamine is a good example of that. The pharmacological, which good idea probably after this seminar, which would be some alcohol. Or the biological, which are things like the pathogens, for instance, salmonella. So we tend to be able to predict these, we tend to be able to control really well. And then we get into the abnormal reactions. One is aversion, and this is where you are mentally averse to a particular product for various different psychological reasons, but for whatever reason, a particular food you just can't eat it because it brings back all sorts of bad memories, school dinners or whatever. And then we get into the intolerances and the allergies. So an intolerance tends to be it's a metabolic defect. We're unable to digest the particular ingredient or food, and an example of that would be celiac disease. Or alternatively, we get into the true food allergies, and these are immune system related, where we need some form of sensitization, and these are what are known as IgE medicated. So we'll come on and have a look at these in a bit more detail. So if we talk about a food intolerance, we would say that that's a negative reaction to food, and food intolerances, they could be immune system related, which are the allergic reactions. Alternatively, we see intolerances a little bit more as related to not being able to digest the particular food because the body's lacking the enzymes or the chemicals that it needs to digest those foods. Or alternatively, it's the body's reaction to that particular chemical or certain chemicals in the foods. So in terms of intolerance, it doesn't have an immune system response. It is just purely metabolic, and intolerances tend to happen if larger amounts of food are consumed, and basically it's because the body's unable to produce the particular chemicals or to perform the chemical reaction to break down and then absorb the food. So just some examples of common food intolerances. We've got the lactose intolerance to milk, celiac, which is the intolerance to the gluten in the different cereal products. We've got some food additives that people are intolerant to. An example might be MSG, the monosodium glutamate, which is known to cause headaches, or nitrates, which are thought to, in some people, cause hives and itching. Or there's the phenylketonuria, the PKU, and that's where the body's unable to metabolize the amino acid phenylalanine. So several different intolerances. And some of the symptoms of intolerance could be nausea, bloating, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and eventually, because the body's unable to digest the foods and absorb the nutrients, people start to waste a little bit and don't thrive. So then we get to allergen. What is an allergy? Well, the difference, an allergy is a form of food intolerance, but this is it's immune system related. And this is when the immune system reacts adversely to a particular food that is harmless to most people. And sometimes the symptoms can be very similar to the symptoms of food poisoning. So sometimes it can be difficult to determine, was it an allergic reaction, was it food poisoning? The difference is, if it's food poisoning, everybody who's eaten the contaminated food would be poorly, whereas if it's an allergic reaction, it's that individual's body's reaction to that particular food. We hear the term anaphylaxis quite a lot, and basically that's the very extreme end of a food allergy. It's very severe, it's very rapid, and it can be life-threatening. Talking about life-threatening, there go our dogs. So typical symptoms of an allergic reaction, it's swelling, the throat, the mouth, which restricts the airway, general weakness, loss of blood pressure, lightheadedness and unconsciousness. And if not treated, it can lead to death or to serious long-term health issues as a result of the reaction. And there we can perhaps just see on the slide a couple of pictures of the lips swelling and the airway starting to swell, and also the rashes, the hives that people get, but very quick, very immediate. Some people who are allergic will say that prior to an attack, they sort of get a sense, they can feel this sense of doom, but it's virtually instant, and it's because it's the immune system is attacking the body. So I had a definition of a true food allergen. As I say, it's a tolerance associated with hypersensitive immune response. So it's the immune system or the immunoglobulin E, IgE mediated reaction, in which basically the immune system's fighting, and it produces these IgE antibodies, which then start to cause all the damage. Generally, with a food allergy, the reaction is a reaction to the protein in the food, and that can be quite staggering when you see some of the foods that people are allergic to, and you're talking about melons and kiwis and strawberries, and we wouldn't think that they contain a great deal of protein, but there's enough in there to cause a reaction. And basically, the body's immune system is mistaking the particular allergen for a dangerous substance, a dangerous invader, and it starts to fight, and the result is that we have these very severe reactions. Saying it's a food allergy, it's incurable, lifelong, and it's only very small quantities of protein that are needed to cause the reaction. One of the problems that we have is different people that are allergic to the same food product have different levels of protein that would be enough to cause them the reaction. So it's very difficult to set some of the thresholds for when would a food be safe and when would it be unsafe for an allergy sufferer. But food allergies, the reaction only occurs to people who are sensitive to the particular allergy. How do we treat an allergy? Well, we don't, or there is no cure for an allergy. And so first of all, we have to identify if people are allergic. So how would we diagnose an allergy? It could be that somebody suffers a mild attack and there's some initial warning signs. It's possibly that somebody suffers a full-blown allergic reaction or an anaphylactic shock, or it could be as a result of a mild attack that some form of testing's done, and these are generally in the form of either skin pricks or alternatively, it may be an exclusion diet where gradually different foods are introduced until we get to the point of introducing a food that causes a reaction. How can we treat? Well, for severe allergy sufferers, they're likely to carry an EpiPen with them, which is a shot of adrenaline to relieve the symptoms of an anaphylactic shock. There are over-the-counter medicines for milder cases. In the UK, it's a medicine called Piriton, but basically it's an antihistamine. Or alternatively, it's really all about avoidance of the food, and to be able to avoid food, that means that industry have to prevent the contamination, so that the allergy sufferer can read a label and determine that product is going to be free from a particular allergen. The anaphylaxis campaign, they do a lot of work, a lot of research, and they state it's up to the individual to avoid the food and carry the necessary treatment. So that would be an EpiPen or some form of antihistamine. But it's up to the food industry to minimise risks by prevention of contamination. So it's all about avoidance and prevention, which means that we need to be doing both. The allergy sufferer needs to be avoiding, the industry needs to be preventing. So for industry, it's all about having an allergen management system in place. And the aim of that is, first of all, to know what allergens are intentionally being added. If we've got a bakery and we're producing bread buns, we automatically are intentionally adding or handling gluten. The one that we really have to think about is to eliminate or to minimise the presence of unintentionally added allergens. So it could be that we're producing plain bread, we're producing cheese bread, we're producing bread with nuts and seeds on it, and it would be to prevent the unintentional contamination of plain bread with one of the other breads containing allergens. Industry also need to be able to justify any advisory warning statements that are put onto labels. So we can't just be putting on contains nuts, contains milk, contains shellfish as a means of precaution without having done a risk assessment. And it's to allow a consistent approach to labelling so that allergy sufferers really do have choice in the products that they're going to be buying. So management of risk, it's up to the business to risk assess the capability of providing safe food to people with food allergies, and it's all about identifying the allergens. It's using a HACCP-based approach to look at the process and to identify where we're likely to get the potential for allergen cross-contamination in our products, and then put adequate controls in place and make sure that those are being monitored, and if necessary we have corrective action to prevent that unintentional presence. So what we need to do is to think, first of all, if an ingredient or if a product intentionally contains an allergenic food stuff, and then we need to look and think, do these products, do these foods have the potential to cross-contaminate into other foods that don't contain these allergens, and put measures in place to avoid that unintentional presence. So I've just put up an example here for you. We've got a couple of products here. We've got an apple pie, and up at the top in the purple boxes, these are all the different allergens that I'm concerned about. So we've got nuts, and we've got peanuts, we've got sesame, we've got fish, we've got mollusks, we've got crustaceans, egg, milk, soybeans, gluten, lupin, mustard, celery, and sulfur dioxide. So those are the EU 14 allergens. And then what I'm doing is, for my almond tart, I start to think which of these allergens are used as a known ingredient in that product. So I've got nuts because I've got ground almonds going in as a powder, and I've got flaked almonds going in as a solid. I don't use peanut, sesame, fish, mollusk or crustacean on site, but I've got egg going into my almond tart, so I've notified that, which I've got it's dried egg powder, and it's also a liquid egg. I've got soya lecithin in the margarine, so we've got soya going in there. I've got gluten in the wheat flour, and I've also got sugar and sulfur dioxide in the sugar. So then in my apple pie, again, we've got liquid egg, we've got butter, we've got soya, we've got wheat flour, and we've got the sulfite in the glucose syrup. So what I start to do then is begin to look at, well, which allergens are used on site, but they're not actually in the product that I'm thinking about. So for instance, in the almond tart, we've got milk used on site, but milk isn't used in the almond tart. And for the apple pie, we've got nuts used on site, but it's not used in the apple pie. So for the almond tart, the allergen of concern would be milk, and for the apple pie, the allergen of concern would be nuts, because these are the ones that we have the potential to unintentionally get into that product and cause contamination. So we think about what allergies are intentionally present, but then we need to start to perform a risk assessment to determine which allergens we could unintentionally get into our products. And what we need to do here is to take the ASSEP approach, draw a detailed process flow of all the process, the raw ingredients, the materials coming through the factory, and beginning to think about areas of concern. And then for each step, it's a case of risk assessing for the potential of cross-contamination of the finished product with your unintended allergen. So how to assess the risk? Well, we use a similar approach to HACCP, but we need a team to conduct our risk assessment, and I've put a team there that covers all areas of the factory and the production. So somebody from production, somebody from technical, somebody from engineering, somebody from purchasing, and we need to look at the risks within the product flow, and then a risk assess. And the best way to do that is to use a allergen risk matrix, looking for likelihood of contamination against severity. And I've just put up an example there of an allergen risk matrix to categorize into low risk, medium risk, and high risk based on a series of parameters. These are just some suggestions. So we're saying a score of 5 for severity. The allergen, it could result in death or irreversible illness, and the likelihood of potential contamination could be on a daily basis. That's the highest one, would result in a score of 25, as opposed to unlikely to affect the consumer or the brand, and unintentional contamination happens less than every 6 months, would score a 1. So we begin to use our risk matrix, but we need to interpret that matrix. So in terms of low risk, saying that possibly we've already got control measures in place, they're already established, and they should be enough to minimise or eliminate the risk. Medium risk, it might be that you need to take some consideration else to reduce the risk, and could we put any other further measures in place? And then with high risk, we're saying a substantial effort should be made to reduce the risk. So we definitely probably need to put extra measures in place, maybe make some changes, and it may be that you need to put some immediate controls in place, particularly if we've got very, very high risk, until we're happy that we've got better controls in place. But what starts to happen then, we'll look at our allergens of concern. So for the almond tart, we decided it was milk. In this product, there's also some other products in the factory that I'm looking at. There was also sesame could be an issue, and mustard could be an issue. So I look at my different process steps from purchase, intake, stores, transfer, sieving, weighing up, and basically, in terms of sesame, I'm thinking where is it the highest risk of the potential of getting sesame into the almond tart, and we've risk assessed, and the areas where we've decided that it could be a problem could be in weighing up, because products will be being weighed up to go into the almond tart in the same area that sesame is being weighed up to go into other products, and possibly if we got a spillage or if we used the same equipment, we could get some cross contamination, and the same idea for the mixing area. In terms of the milk, just to give you an idea, this one, unintentional addition of milk into the almond tart, we've thought perhaps at sieving that could be high, because milk is added in as powder, and when it's sieved, powder tends to get up into the atmosphere and then begin to settle in different areas. So it could be that milk was settling onto other products. And the same again in the weigh up and the mixing area. It's how the products are being handled, and because it's an open product at that point, ingredients, there's probably more chance for contamination at those points. Whereas by the time we get to products being packed and dispatched, by that point they're wrapped, they're enclosed, less chance for unintentional contamination. So once we've started to risk assess, we then need to start to think about the controls that we're going to put in place, and a variety of different processing controls that we would need to plan and implement. But basically, to prevent unintentional cross-contamination, we've got two main forms. The first ones are your systems, your procedures, which includes the procedures and the scheduling. And then the second one is actually putting in process control measures. So in terms of scheduling, if or where we would production schedule so that we're running the no allergen or the low risk allergenic products first, the clean products first, and then move on to producing with the high risk allergenic products last. Full clean down before we started again. And in that way, then we try to prevent this unintentional cross contamination from one product onto the next, and preventing it from happening. We'll also start to put together or put in place a series of procedures which will detail the method, the responsibility, the frequency, how these are going to be monitored, the records that are going to be taken, and the corrective actions. But one of the key things with any procedures and any processes that are put in place is staff training, and we have to ensure that staff are fully trained against the procedures, refreshed as and when necessary, and are fully aware of the need for the procedures and the consequences of not following procedures. So some of the process controls that we could in place when we're thinking about packaging, it's the actual labelling, it's the artwork on the labelling, making sure that we've got the correct artwork on packaging, making sure that products are being packed into the correct products. As I mentioned before, we've got the trifles in the cheesecake. It's gone into the wrong packaging. And it's one of the areas, certainly in BRC 7 now, labelling and labelling control is going to become a fundamental, partly because of the problems. We have other areas around the supply chain, so it's looking at your supplier, the confidence in your supplier, finding out from your supplier what allergens that they're handling on site, and them telling you should they change their processing or should they change their ingredients and start to work with allergens that you're not aware that they're handling. We need to have strict control on rework and labelling of rework to ensure that product that contains allergen only goes back into product that contains allergen, and we don't get unintentional contamination from rework. It's also the storage of rework and ensuring that it's stored in a segregated, separated area. Things like air transfer, it's where ventilation systems are pulling air from, because particularly for powders and particularly for allergens that are in powder form, we can spread a lot of problems through air systems and ventilation systems. So it's looking at the pressure system and the air transfer. We have to think about things like waste and where we're generating waste, and how it's being handled, how it's being disposed of, so we're not taking product that's waste with allergens in it across through clean areas in production facilities. New product development's another area where we perhaps have to have careful thought about what we're including in as new products, and are we introducing any new allergens as a result of new product development, and any necessary controls that we'd have to put in place. Controlling engineers and controlling how engineers conduct maintenance of systems, and access to various pieces of equipment. What if they're carrying out engineering work on products or processes where allergens have been handled? It's a clean down and making sure that tools are cleaned before they go and conduct engineering in other areas. Which I suppose goes into shared equipment. It's if equipment is shared, it's cleaning, it's disinfection before we use equipment for non-allergenic products. It's a good idea to have colour coding of equipment so that we can ensure that we've got strict separation. Cleaning is essential, particularly if we're using the same processing line for the production of allergen containing and non-allergen containing materials. It's essential that after we've had allergen containing products going down lines, that we have a full clean and we have a validation of that clean to ensure that it will be affected, followed by ongoing verification each time that that products have been cleaned. Transport, making sure that during transport products are separated and segregated. People, that we've got the awareness of people, and that they're aware of the potential for the different ways that they could cause contamination and cross-contamination, possibly having separate people working on allergen lines, protective clothing that's colour-coded, changes of protective clothing to work on lines where allergens are being handled, and general storage, that we've got separate storage areas for allergens to prevent that unintentional contamination, as well as procedures for things like spillages to prevent contamination. So we would need to have in place the procedures, the control measures, and then we need to make sure, of course, that those procedures are being monitored, and as necessary, any corrective action is taken, and all the allergen procedures that we put in place need to be verified on an ongoing basis through audit and inspection, and through testing. So just very quickly, allergen testing is an area where we're learning all the time. A lot of new test kits are coming out onto the market, and the variety of different test types. Some can be used for cleaning validations, particularly the rapid tests, test strips, usually that change colour, or we get a coloured band. These are qualitative tests which tell us we've got the presence or we've got the absence of a particular known allergen. Very useful systems. They can be used on site, and you can get a reading in as quickly as 5 to 10 minutes. They are quite cheap to purchase, and really good for monitoring of cleaning regimes, and for verification and screening purposes. So there you can see it's a simple dip test, and then we start to see a colour change, and we get a strip there. So you can see the difference with a positive, we've got a blue and a pink. With a negative, we've got a blue strip, or an invalid, we wouldn't get a colour at all, and we would have to repeat the test. But very good for presence or absence. Alternatively, we have things like the ELISA, which stands for enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. They can be conducted on a variety of different allergens. Again, these tests, they can be used on site, or alternatively swabs can be sent off to labs. These can be both qualitative and quantitative, so they could tell us, yes, we've got presence or absence. Alternatively, we can actually detect levels of particular allergens. They are good. The level of detection, generally it's about 1%, but it can be as low as 0.1%. So there can be very efficient test types. Or the other one we've got are the PCR, which are the polymerase chain reactions. These ones, these have to be done in a lab. They're slightly more complex, more complicated, but these ones are looking for the DNA within the sample, and they will actually detect levels of DNA down to 0.01. So very, very, very good tests, but it depends on what we're wanting to achieve. The rapid tests for probably the monitoring, maybe ELISA, PCR for some of the longer term verifications. We've also got to review our allergen risk management system, and we need to make sure that we're reviewing it to ensure that it is working correctly on an ongoing basis. And if necessary, we need to obviously make any changes, and it could be if we've changed product formulation, or we've changed a process, we've changed scheduling, it may be that we need to go back and revisit the risk assessment and put alternative control measures in place. Finally, really important that we keep records, because they're going to prove and they're going to prove evidence that we've got an effective allergen management system in place. We also have to make sure that our records are being audited, and that we've got full confidence that we are managing to control allergens on site. The length of record retention needs to be defined. That's generally for the length of the product plus the shelf life, but that's something that as a company you would need to determine. And of course, any information about allergens and the verification of the allergens need to be going into the management review for discussion. So, final question. What do you think, as a result of listening to this seminar, it's been a very quick overview, but what do you think you're going to do now? Are you going to make any changes in how you manage allergens?
Okay, so if you can type your comments in there, what over the next 30, 90 days or straight away, what you're going to do in your business as a result of this seminar? Are you what you're going to change, what you're going to improve, what learning are you going to apply? So if you just type that in, and we'll read some of those out shortly. Okay, Ruth.
Okay, so just to recap then, allergen management, it's all about, first of all, putting a plan in place. So it's all about thinking about your risk assessment and looking for your unintentionally added allergens. So going through the process, putting adequate control measures in place, then making sure that those procedures are being followed on a day-to-day basis, that we're monitoring them. We're also verifying and auditing those systems, and finally reviewing and making any amendments as necessary. Okay, so thank you for listening, and any questions, I'll throw it back to Simon.
Yeah, brilliant. You can stop sharing your screen now, Ruth. Fantastic that.
Okay.
There's a lot to cramming in an hour, because you've given us a background on what allergens are, what problems can be caused, you know, the different types of allergen, but then on to, you know, how to control that in your process, how to risk assess, how to get your process controls in now to monitor, prevent. So there's a huge amount to get into. You could almost spend a day on this topic.
Oh, easily.
But at least it's given a flavour. And I especially like the process control part that went through all the different areas where give a few tips on what you need to do there. So that was great. Just, I've got one thing you said, and I think everybody, well, it's the truth that a lot of recalls and withdrawals related to allergens are because of undeclared allergen ingredients. Is that correct? Or wrongly declared? Or
it's a bit of both, yes. Quite often it's because they've been undeclared. We haven't actually realised that maybe one of our raw ingredients contains a particular allergen, so it hasn't been put onto the label.
Yeah.
Alternatively, it's because we've then got unintentional cross-contamination happening.
Right. Well, just one thing what I don't understand out of that, when it comes to labeling, obviously you've got to design your label correctly in the first place, with the correct contents on the label. So you've got to originate it right. Then obviously there's the manufacture of that label, the printing of that label to make sure that the printer prints it correctly. And then obviously you've got to apply the correct label to the correct product. So what I don't understand is, how do they find out retrospectively, these companies, that they've labeled it wrong after? I don't understand how that.
I think it's probably because afterwards somebody will maybe look or dig a little bit deeper into a specification and perhaps look at one of the smaller raw ingredients or one of the processing aids, and then realise that they've just missed putting something on as an allergen.
Yeah, so you can have all of those process controls, which take, the risk assessment, the process controls are all the stages of design, manufacture, and the little old label ends up being the cause in a lot of cases. Yeah,
it could be. Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's becoming a fundamental in version 7 is the whole sort of label control. And it's not just, as you say, the initial sort of design and the artwork and everything else. It also then moves into the putting the wrong label on the wrong pack, which is quite easy to do as well in some instances.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll just go through. There's loads of questions, and we're not going to get through all of them, but we can pick the ones we miss later. But let's try and plow through a few of them. Do we need? Gobinder said, do we need to write the word fish on the label for frozen tuna for the EU market, or if the word tuna is on, it's tuna fish, do you need to write contains tuna on the label?
Fish is a funny one. Yes, with fish you have to say fish, and then you have to say what type of fish it is. So it would be fish, tuna.
Right. Okay.
Or tuna and then fish.
Right. Yeah. Next one, Laura. What best practices can be shared for cleaning equipment in facilities with several allergens? Any ideas on best practice for cleaning equipment?
I suppose it would be a case of, if you can, colour coding it, possibly segregating through colour coding, and then maybe segregating through where it's stored. So it's bespoke cleaning equipment that's used on different lines with different allergens.
Okay. Kirsten, any suggestions for dealing with ingredients that come in with made on shared equipment or may contain allergen warning? So that's where something's come in to you as, let's say, an ingredient or something, and, and on the label of that it says made on shared equipment or may contain allergen, a certain allergen.
So is that from a point of view of then doing your risk assessment or doing?
I think they mean that, let's say I'm making a product, but some ingredients I'm bringing in are labeled that they may contain something else or have been manufactured on shared equipment. I suppose you've just got to take it that it may contain, well then it does contain, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if it's saying it may contain, then you've got to take that into account as you risk assess your product.
Yeah. Okay. What about restaurants?
It might depend a bit on what the allergen is, but
yeah. What about restaurants? I know we're talking about manufacturing. That's your background, I think. What about in the case of restaurants where several allergens are being handled, in close proximity to each other? How do you minimize cross contamination? I suppose it's is that segregation and labeling, and it's the same thing on a smaller scale, isn't it?
Pretty much, yes. It's just separation. I mean, now, well, certainly in the EU with the Food Information for Consumer regulations, it's not just pre-packed food. It's open, loose food, and sort of restaurants, caterers, and that have to now declare allergens, and so the menu would have to declare, or there would have to be a declaration somewhere within the restaurants stating which allergens are handled.
Okay, thanks for that. Peter is asking, would the rapid test work on all allergens? Is there a test kit for all?
The rapid test kits are for specific allergens, so you would have to buy a rapid test kit for the allergen of concern. So there's, for instance, you would want one for gluten, or you'd want one for casein, or you'd want one for loop liver. It could be that they're not. We don't have rapid test kits for every allergen as yet, because they're in the process of being developed, but so we've got them for the major ones at the moment. But you would have to make sure you bought a specific one for the allergen of concern.
Okay. And then David is asking, what allergen risks are known as resulting of the packaging materials? Is there anything themselves in? I don't think so. I don't think any packaging has, let's say, any of the 100 allergens as an ingredient.
I wouldn't say in packaging, no. I mean, the biggest risk would be if you've got any potential for contamination with nuts, with staff producing packaging that have been eating or handling nuts. But the chances are most packaging companies don't allow nuts on site, and to be honest, the risk would be extremely low.
Yeah, that's the thing. If staff are wearing workwear in canteens and not getting changed, which does happen in packaging, then if nuts were freely allowed and not banned off the site, then you could get nut dust on clothing that could cross-contaminate the packaging. But in terms of the packaging itself, no, there's no risk from that. Okay. But also for packaging, it's important to get the printing right, into printed packaging.
Yes, very definitely. Yes.
Lewis has asked, what's Lewis asked? BRC request to check if food grade lubricants are allergen free. Which allergens?
Yeah.
So you check lubricants are allergen free, do you? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of them are nut oil derivatives, so it's checking that they're not basically that they're not nut oil derivative. Okay.
Sean is asking, there have been several recalls for peanuts in cumin. General consensus is that it was economically motivated adulteration. How can you guard against this? Peanut is something typically associated with cumin as much as salmonella, etc. Peanuts is not something associated with it. So, well, that's a different subject, isn't it? A deliberate adulteration with an allergen.
It's because there's been a recall fairly recently. It was cumin that had been cross-contaminated with peanut husk, and had got into the cumin, which has caused a bit of a problem. But yeah, that's more going down the food defence line rather than possibly. I mean, if you determined that you'd got that problem, you've got the contamination, then it might be a case of having to withdraw and recall.
Okay. I think we're just going to take one more for now. Lewis is asking, are there reliable and confident threshold levels for allergens, or is it complete absence? You know, are the threshold levels?
There are some for gluten particularly, but the state where we are with allergen learning at the moment is we're learning all the time, and we don't have thresholds for all the different allergens, and it probably could be quite a long time coming, just simply because different people react differently to different levels of allergen. So, for instance, some people with nut allergy would it would be enough to set them off just walking into a room where nuts are handled, whereas other people physically have to put the nut in their mouth to cause an allergic reaction. So because there's such a wide tolerance, it's difficult to set a threshold. Yeah,
because you don't know every consumer, every personal issue, do you? Right, we're going to have to leave it at that. What we'll do is...
And we're talking parts per billion for some of them.
Right. Yes, exactly. Right, thanks for all the questions. What we'll do is I'll collate all these and I'll put them on the IFSQM forum, and if we've missed any, we can follow up there and direct all attendees to that. I'll just say, Ruth, thanks very much again. It's been a great webinar.
Pleasure.
Great primer. A huge amount to cram into an hour, and you've done a great job in giving us a good overview. It's a hot topic, and that's why we've got lots of comments and questions on it. So maybe we do something more on allergens in the future as well.
Yep.
Okay. So thanks on behalf of all the attendees and for the IFSQN, Ruth, and I hope to see you very soon.
Great.
Okay. Thanks very much. Cheers.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, thanks for your attendance today. It's been a great webinar. Thanks to Ruth, and we'll see you next week for foreign material detection and prevention with Robert Rogers from Metla Toledo. Take care, everybody. Have a great Friday and enjoy your weekend. Thanks very much.